And everyone to have ever come from Swindon. There are a few examples as successful or as enduring as XTC. Founded in 1972 by frontman Andy Partridge and bassist Colin Moulding, the musical outfit grew and grew throughout the 1970s alongside the birth of punk and new wave. After the additions of drummer Terry Chambers and guitarist Dave Gregory, the local lads became a household name. A group that did not fit into contemporary trends, XTC found success with a unique sound which still feels fresh to this day, decades later. February 1982, that arguably Swindon's greatest ever band, XTC, released their most successful single, Senses Working Overtime, from their fifth studio album, English Settlement, which also hit the top 5. The White Horse in Uffington is the instantly recognisable image on the album cover, plus town fans will recognise its lead single, of course, from the tunnel at the county ground, every time Swindon score. Hello everyone, welcome to John's Box, my YouTube channel. My name is John, and in the series, Famous Swindonians, today it's part 8, which we're going to feature the famous Swindon band, the Swindon Fab Four, namely XTC. Yeah, I'm from Swindon, so this band is close to my heart. By the way, please support my channel. Currently, I'm on 899 subs, so please help me get to 1,000 ASAP. I'd love that magic 1,000. 95% of you watching this video don't actually subscribe. Okay, that's enough of the YouTube blurb. So as I've mentioned, you've already listened to the introduction and watched the introduction as well. But there's going to be a lot more. It is Swindon's most successful band. You're going to find out exactly what the Swindon connection is. And there'll be a lot more snippets because this band is still performing. It's going to perform in June. I will give you some very interesting news at the end of the video when you see me again about the origins of the name, and also some interesting information from my cousin who lived very close to one of the members of the band. So for now, sit back and relax. By the way, I'll be choosing the next famous Swindonian to be featured in some time to come. So far in this series of famous Swindonians, which started back in 2022, I have featured in no particular order Diana Dawes, David Murray John, or John Murray David, or whatever his name was. Then there was the great Rick Davies of Supertramp. By the way, that video has attracted over 3,000 views. Sir Alex Stanier, who was a GWR engineer. Ralph Bates, who was a novelist, writer, journalist. David Howe, the professional golfer. And most recently, the great John Franken, MBE. So sit back and relax. Enjoy the remaining part of the video and join me in the summary. People are probably unaware of the international reputation of XTC, who made a name for themselves with their own brand of new wave music played against the punk revolution of the late 1970s. They briefly enjoyed national stardom as first making plans for Nigel, and then Senses Working Overtime even earned them a place on Top of the Pops. majority of other bands from the era have slipped into obscurity, XTC retain a large following worldwide, especially in America, and are renowned both for their inventive music and their determination to follow their artistic rather than their commercial instincts. Period when they effectively took strike action to free themselves from a contract with Richard Branson's Virgin Records, XTC's return briefly to the music scene in 1988 with their album Apple Venus Volume 1, and their last album to date was Star, that is Apple Venus Volume 2, released in 2001. Their fans will wait in vain to see the group in concert, though, as a serious attack of stage fright some years ago convinced group leader Andy Partridge that it was time to turn his back on touring. However, when it comes to concerts, something's coming up soon. He was born on the island of Malta on the 11th of November 1953, where his father, a sailor, was stationed. The family eventually returned to Swindon and lived at Penhill, where Andy, inspired by the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night and the Monkees, set up Radio Anglo broadcasting records out of his bedroom window. Promising footballer until he had an unsuccessful trial with Swindon Town, was to become XTC's drummer. Partridge, Moulding and Chambers were eventually brought together, along with Andy's friend Dave Cartner, in the spring of 1973, when they called themselves Star Park. First gig at Swindon College, I went there, as support to Thin Lizzy, and shortly afterwards changed their names to the Helium Kids. They also recruited a new vocalist called Steve Hutchins. The Helium Kids had to wait 2 years for any nationwide exposure, and it came in the form of a small feature in the New Musical Express NME. But it didn't change their luck, and in the summer of 1975, they opted for a change in the name instead. The inspiration was a Jimmy Durant film, of all things, in which the New York comic was searching for a lost chord. Having found it, he cried, "That's it! I'm in ecstasy!" It struck a chord with Partridge too, who thought it epitomised their incisive, witty style. Partridge also became the band's lead vocalist at this time, replacing Steve Hutchins. It was still a long way off for XTC, and they had to wait for punk, which, by the way, exploded at the end of 1976, before they, XTC, got the boost they wanted. They were never a punk band, but they were outrageous enough to suit the mood. The only problem was a sudden lack of keyboard player, because recent recruit John Perkins left to join another band. Andy then spotted a notice in John Holmes' organ shop in Farringdon Road saying simply, "Keyboard player seeks band." Whoa! So it was that Barry Andrews joined the band. Born in London, Andrews had moved to Park North at the age of 7, you see, all council house kids, and was a high achiever at school. But he had played in several rock bands before XTC was to provide him with a first taste of success. By January 1977, it was clear to the band that they were on the verge of something big. Buoyed up by the new wave movement that had suddenly boosted their reputation, they were even confident enough to turn down a recording contract with CBS, holding out instead to sign with Virgin in August 1977, the month in which Elvis Presley died, by the way. In many ways, their first record epitomised the XTC story over the next 20 years. The 3D EP, featuring science fiction, was acclaimed by the critics and loved by XTC's now large following in Britain, but it failed to make an impression on the charts. Came Statue of Liberty, a song banned by the BBC because it contained a line, "And in my fantasy, I'll sail beneath your skirt." I mean, BBC used to ban everything in those days. Well, still does. That flopped too, but their debut album, White Music, did make the top 40, and a follow-up called Go To, which got to number 21. It was now 1979, and XTC looked set for bigger things, despite the loss of Barry Andrews, whose departure was mostly due to a personality clash with Partridge. Tony and Dave Gregory, born in September 19 1952 at the same nursing home in Westcott Road where Terry Chambers had been born, he restored the group to a foursome, the Fab Four of Swindon. A new single, Life Begins at the Hop, secured a single week in the singles chart at number 54, and even a spot on Top of the Pops. But most of all, it signalled a change from the brash, loud XTC of before, leaning towards pop and were much more accessible, a fact proved beyond doubt by the next single. For Nigel was written by Colin Moulding and looked set to provide the group with a top 10 hit, but it peaked at number 17. The new album, Drums and Wires, was also a success, but a follow-up single, Wait Till Your Boat Goes Down, was too far removed from the mainstream of pop, and it flopped badly. XTC still had a commercial pop songs up their sleeves, and the album Black Sea was well received. But the best was still to come, as the band reached their commercial peak at the start of 1982. Senses Working Overtime made it to number 10, while the new album, English Settlement, got to number 5 and enjoyed worldwide success. Much more importantly, it was an artistic watershed for XTC, as Partridge realised, even before it was released. Until English Settlement, he said, I'd felt like a child in a sweet shop, wanting to try a bit of everything, but only being allowed to choose liqueur all sorts. I'd broken free. In fact, the opposite was true. Suffered a breakdown, was unable to tour, and far from crashing in on the success of English Settlement, Partridge became a recluse and XTC ran into debt. They were rescued from disaster by a renegotiated contract with Virgin, which tied them to a further 6 albums. But there were still problems. Drummer Terry Chambers left the band and emigrated to Australia, and the remaining threesome failed to sustain the impetus of Black Sea and English Settlement. The albums Murmur and The Big Express both floundered despite a measure of support from the critics. There was no stemming the creative output of the band, nor their tongue-in-cheek alter ego. As the Dukes of Stratosphere, they were to produce 2 albums which brilliantly parodied the psychedelic 60s. The next album though showed that it was impossible to predict how XTC's output would be received. It was also like the next album, Oranges and Lemons, but it's not the one that the kid sings. Oranges and lemons. No. Which British fans clearly did not. They even looked set for a major breakthrough following some high-profile TV appearances. In King for a Day, which was written by Moulding, they had the single that many thought capable of doing it, but with Partridge still refusing to play live, the moment was gone. It was 1989, and it would be 3 more years before XTC produced a new album. Again well received in certain quarters, not surprisingly failed to deliver the commercial success that had always eluded the band, and it looked increasingly likely that none such would be their swan song, as XTC effectively withdrew their labour for 7 long years in an ultimately successful bid to finally free themselves from a contract with Virgin, who for years had appeared at odds with what Partridge was trying to achieve for the band. After severing their links with Virgin, they eventually released an album under the Cookin' Vinyl label. A track from the album, I'd Like That, was released as a single. 22nd, 1999, the partnership of Partridge and Moulding released Apple Venus Volume 1. But despite the lack of new work, the intervening years have not been short of incident for XTC. A succession of illnesses, divorce and financial problems have dogged Partridge, and when XTC finally got back into the studio, an argument over recording fees almost scuppered things again. The departure of longtime guitarist Dave Gregory, just as things seemed to be settling down, left XTC as effectively a duet rather than a group. Volume 1 was an album with an acoustic orchestral sound and was well received by critics and by XTC's still huge following of dedicated fans worldwide. Their last album to date being a follow-up in 2001, The Wasp Star, which was Apple Venus Volume 2. As far as Swindon is concerned, Andy Partridge and Colin Moulding still live close by, even though Partridge at least has enjoyed a love-hate relationship with the town. The frontman, whose daughter is now forging a career in music, remaining largely unnoticed by the people here except for a few who recognise him, most notably for his round glasses and unusual headgear. In truth though, Swindon ought to be proud of them, and certainly prouder than they appear. During their music-making days, they made hundreds of references to everyday life in Swindon in their work, and they have repeatedly harked back to their roots in one way or another. Of the style of music, and Partridge's much publicised anxiety attacks, it's been said that it's very unlikely that XTC will ever play live again. But that's not true. Chris Twomey, author of the band's definitive biography called XTC, Chalk Hills and Children, which summed it up all rather well. He wrote, "After 15 years of making records, XTC remain an enigma. They don't tour, they have few hits, they refuse to conform to the rudiments of the music industry, yet, perversely, that industry still recognizes them as a rare and precious commodity. They invoke a respect, in some a passion, that would dwarf many artists selling 10 times the volume of records." Here is the XTC discography of singles. Life Begins at the Hop from 1979, which got to number 44. Making Plans for Nigel, 1979, got to number 17 in the charts, UK singles charts that is. Generals and Majors, Don't Lose Your Temper, 1980, got to number 32. Towers of London, 1980, number 31. Sergeant Rock, 1981, got to number 16. Senses Working Overtime, 1982, their only top 10 hit, got to number 10. Ball and Chain, 1982, number 58 only. Love on a Farm, Boys' Wages, 1983, number 50. All You Pretty Girls, 1984, got to number 55. Mayor of Simpleton, 1989, got to number 46. The Disappointed, 1992, got to number 33, and finally, The Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead, 1992, only number 71. Well, there's a lot that you got through, sorry. What have I been on? Yeah, a lot of information there about the band. There are just a couple of more snippets of information before we choose the next Swindonian. Take a listen to this. It's from the Old Grey Whistle Test back in 1982. The presenter talking about XTC. Have a listen. Hopefully it's loud enough.
I think our first studio band tonight need very little introduction. They arrived via Punk, Didcot, Chippenham Junction and Swindon. They've just released their fifth album, a double called English Settlement. They've widened their musical instrumentation, as you will no doubt see. The album's released tomorrow, and here especially for John Caulfield, who does our sound balance and who, due to Gremlins, didn't get a credit last week. Please welcome XTC and Yacht Dance.
Okay then, right, just thought you'd be interested in that. And something else, a cousin of mine who's a bit older than me, lives in Penhill, where Andy Partridge actually comes from. And he sent me a message. I messaged him to give me some information about Andy Partridge, hoping that he would know something, seeming as he went to school with him. And he wrote back to me, and this is what he said. I quote, "He, Andy Partridge, lived about 5 doors away in Southwick Avenue in the early 70s. In the summer, he'd have his bedroom window wide open, blasting out heavy rock music that we'd never heard before, like Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix. In our house, we played Radio 2 stuff like Gracie Fields and Harry Seacombe. Andy was way ahead of us. He was a bit of a loner as well, I think. When we were playing football in Allington Road, we'd see him walking up the road with a guitar on his back. Little did we know how famous he'd become. Now that is just incredible. I asked him also about Colin Mauldin, who was from Pen Hill, but he hasn't actually replied yet to that one. If he does reply, I will put a postscript on the end of the video. So there you go. That is just amazing, isn't it? There. Okay then. XTC. I just said it. Sorry, I'm giving the game away. Spoiler alert. What does it actually stand for? Well, you think it's the drug ecstasy, but it isn't. In fact, I did Google it because I didn't know myself. I'd always wondered what it meant. The letters, I mean, what they denote. So I quote from the AI overview. I know you all hate AI, but it says the band's XTC's name, according to Wikipedia, or according to whoever, was inspired by a quote from Jimmy Durand, which is, "That's it, I'm in ecstasy." Andy Partridge, the band's guitarist and vocalist, derived XTC from this exclamation, primarily because of its emphatic appearance in print. There you see it. It is impressive. It's important to note that the band name is not related to the drug ecstasy. There's another snippet of information. The Dukes of Stratosphere was considered, but Partridge thought it was too flowery and psychedelic. He derived ecstasy, as I've just mentioned, from Jimmy Durand's exclamation upon discovering the last chord. That's it, I'm ecstasy. I've already said it. The name was chosen mainly for its emphatic appearance. So that's what I've already said. Sorry for waffling. Now, before we choose the next famous Swindonian, there is an XTC fan festival. I'll put a screenshot of that on, to be held on Friday, Sunday the 20th, for 21st and 22nd of June 2025 at Mecca in Swindon. It's a weekend event. Ticket, there's a sellout, but you can join the waiting list for tickets. I wonder how many people are waiting there. Okay, so the band is still alive. They're still performing, as it seems. So yeah, if you go in, then great, lucky you. If you're not, maybe somebody will drop out. You can be on that waiting list. Right then, I'm going to choose the next Swindonian to be featured in some time to come. Whoa, they've all fallen out, haven't they? So that wasn't meant to happen. These strips with their names on it. Well, I'm going to choose this one, which was going to fall on the floor, and it's going to be Edith Bessie New, politician, English suffragette. Interesting. She was born in 1877, died in 1951. She was born and bred in Swindon. That'll be featured in some time to come in this series. That's it then. Hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to comment, like or dislike. Remember, you have every right to dislike this video. This is a choice. If you think it's a load of rubbish, put the thumbs down. If you like it, put the thumbs up. If you want to, subscribe. Also, your comments add to the content of this video. So if you know any of the band members, you live near them, if you've got something to share that's interesting, just do it now. Okay, well, not right now, but after you've watched the video. And that's it then. I'm tired. I need to go to sleep now, so thanks for staying up. Sorry, thanks for watching to the end. Bye-bye.
Next two bands. Unfortunately, because of problems, we can't.
server says that you cannot play the saxophone or the trumpet or the clarinet, then what you must do is fucking shoot them!